His 82-year-old mother lies dead in the next room, and Mapp matter-of-factly explains what happened. In July 2022, on the New South Wales Central Coast, an argument between mother and son spiraled into horror. Mapp claims his frail mother came at him with a kitchen knife. In self-defense, he says, he grabbed the nearest object, a heavy 15-kilogram, 33-pound potted plant, and hurled it at her.
She wanted to stab me, I protected myself.
Okay, so she tried to stab you, and how did you try to protect yourself?
Basically, she had it back to me, sweeping the floor, I could see. She was going to pick the knife up and she partially. I didn't know how hard I was throwing it. I was in the midst of arguing with Mum and saw the knife.
This unbelievable detail immediately raised officers' eyebrows. On camera, Mapp is emotional but oddly composed as he confesses to throwing the pot plant that struck his mother's head and killed her. He insists it was not intentional murder, just a sudden loss of control brought on by drug withdrawal and years of tension. Yet what he admits doing is horrifying, essentially bludgeoning his own mother with a piece of her garden. Bodycam footage later presented in court shows Mapp's initial account. He tells police his mother fell down during the fight and that he tried performing CPR for hours to revive her. But under questioning, he eventually acknowledges he threw the pot, though he maintains it was the heat of the moment. "I threw it, but she had a knife," he pleads, as if that justifies the act. Investigators didn't buy his self-defense claim, especially after learning that, immediately after killing his mother, Mapp went out and pawned her TV and tools for drug money. His belated 000 call came only after he'd tried, and failed, to cover his tracks and profit from her death. The bodycam video of Mapp's confession is disturbing not only for the patricidal violence, but also for the strange mix of excuse-making and admission. He does confess to the act. The officers have him clearly stating he threw the pot, yet he clings to a narrative of, "It was an accident. I didn't mean to kill her." The judge later noted that while the death resulted from an intentional act, it likely was an unintended consequence fueled by emotional turmoil and addiction. In 2025, David Mapp was sentenced to 21 years in prison for murdering his mother. His case stands out as a shocking confession due to the sheer strangeness of the weapon and the killer-victim relationship. The bodycam captured a man who had reached a breaking point, and once the deed was done, he admitted it, if only to spin it as something less heinous than it was. A pot plant as a murder weapon, a son as the killer. It's the kind of confession that leaves even seasoned police shaking their heads. In June 2012, 32-year-old Claire Holland walked out of a Bristol pub and was never seen again. A mother of 4, she had recently split from her partner, Darren Osmond, and had been due to meet him that evening. From the start, suspicion lingered over Osmond, who was known for his volatile temper. But with no body, no forensic evidence, and no witnesses to a crime, the case went cold. 7 years later, in July 2019, the investigation flickered back to life. A drunken Osmond dialed 999 and told the operator he had her killed. The call was recorded, but by the next day he denied everything, claiming he had been drunk and had made it up. Still, police saw it as a critical slip, proof that there was something to be uncovered. In 2020, Avon and Somerset police decided on an extraordinary tactic, a Mr. Big undercover sting. An officer, under the alias Paddy O'Hara, moved into a flat near Osmond's home in Patchway, Bristol, and deliberately befriended him. Posing as a petty criminal, O'Hara offered him cash-in-hand work, moving stolen goods, acting as a lookout for staged robberies, all carefully scripted scenarios designed to build trust. Over the next 20 months, they spent hours together playing pool, drinking, and talking, with O'Hara cultivating the image of a loyal friend and fellow criminal. During these months, Osmond began making dark, suggestive remarks about Claire. He told O'Hara she would never see the light of day again, and implied her body had been dumped in water and carried halfway to Spain. The officer responded without judgment, reinforcing the illusion that he was a safe confidant. All of these conversations were secretly recorded, forming a growing archive of circumstantial evidence. By June 2022, O'Hara had earned Osmond's complete trust, On 15th June, during a drive in the undercover van, he pressed Osment directly. "You've been carrying this for so long. I know you did it. You've never told me the details." Osment's reply was chilling. He said he trusted O'Hara like a brother and began to confess.
Because you know more than anybody knows. You know, I hope it's not, I need to make sure because, you know what I mean, put it this way, life skills. The time it happened, there was a massive load of bugs. And there was a load of people and all come rushing down like load of bugs. And I think it's all.
He admitted luring Claire to the pub where he worked, a location with no CCTV coverage, and getting into a drunken argument. In a burst of rage, he strangled her. He described using his knife skills from working as a chef to dismember her, demonstrating on himself how he cut her apart. He said he burned his clothes, disposed of the knife by slipping it into a co-worker's toolbox, and weighted her remains before dumping them in water to ensure they would never surface. Osment ended by telling O'Hara he felt sick, but relieved, like a weight's come off my shoulders. He had no idea that every word had been recorded. Soon after, the undercover officer disappeared from his life. In August 2022, police arrested Osment for Claire's murder. At trial in late 2023, jurors heard his recorded confessions and testimony from others he had boasted to over the years. The defense claimed the sting was oppressive and that his words were drunken bravado, but the jury was unconvinced. In December 2023, Darren Osment was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years before parole eligibility. Claire's body has never been found, and under Helen's law, his refusal to disclose its location could keep him in prison for life. For Claire's family, the conviction brought justice but not closure. The precise fate of her remains remains Osment's final secret, one he may take to his grave. In Covington, Kentucky, a 2006 murder case had long gone cold. The victim's family left without answers for over a decade. Then, in January 2024, an unexpected confession cracked the case wide open, not in a police station, but in a county jail. Timothy Delahanty, a Kentucky inmate, had been awaiting trial for an unrelated assault when he stunned officers by suddenly confessing to the unsolved 2006 stabbing death of 28-year-old Paul Clayton. It was an unusual setting for such a revelation.
I stabbed him in the stomach. The first, strangled him with the telephone cord.
Delahanty was in custody for attacking a fellow inmate when he decided to come clean about an older crime weighing on him. According to prosecutors, Delahanty's confession included details only the killer would know, immediately convincing investigators that it was genuine. Body-worn camera video from the jail captures Delahanty's matter-of-fact admission. In the footage, he speaks with an air of resignation. He tells Ellesmere police detectives how, back in 2006, he stabbed Paul Clayton to death, and even reveals hidden details about the crime scene, for example, describing the weapons and wounds. The officers exchange looks of surprise. This is the very case they suspected him of years ago, but could never prove. And here he is, voluntarily giving them the closure they needed. Why confess now? It turns out that after years of evading murder charges, Delahanty had landed in jail for a different violent incident. He had tried to strangle another inmate in 2023. Facing serious new charges and possibly a life sentence regardless, Delahanty opted to unburden himself of the old murder. Perhaps he calculated there was little left to lose. Perhaps, as some close to him suggested, there was a flicker of conscience. In any event, he not only confessed, but pleaded guilty in court to the 2006 murder shortly thereafter. The plea deal combined his sentences, effectively ensuring he will spend the rest of his days behind bars. The jailhouse confession of Timothy Delahanty is striking for its cold pragmatism. One local news report noted that, even though he admitted to the crime, he hasn't explained his motive. Indeed, on the video, when detectives ask why he killed Clayton, Delahanty just shrugs. No apology, no dramatic story. Just a killer finally admitting what he did, as if checking a box on a to-do list.
I didn't even know the guy.
You didn't even know him.
I don't know, he's had urges.
This case demonstrates how the truth can surface in the most unexpected places. A man who stayed silent for 18 years decided to confess in a jail rec yard, ending a cold case with a casual conversation caught on a body cam. For Paul Clayton's family, it wasn't the heartfelt apology they might have wanted, but it was, at last, an answer and a measure of justice. Delahanty's monotone confession, lacking any remorse, also serves as a stark reminder. Some murderers carry their secrets with ease until circumstance forces their hand. For 23 years, Eugene Gligor lived freely, even as a killer's shadow trailed behind him. In 2001, Gligor's ex-girlfriend's mother, 47-year-old Leslie Preer, was found brutally beaten and strangled in her Maryland home. DNA from an unknown male was collected, but without a match, the case went cold. Gligor moved on, built a career, and likely thought he had gotten away with murder. Then, in 2024, the cold case unit came knocking, armed with genetic genealogy and a DNA match that pointed straight to Gligor. Police staged a clever operation, secretly collecting Gligor's DNA from a water bottle when he flew back from a trip abroad. The test results were irrefutable. His DNA matched the crime scene. With this evidence in hand, detectives confronted Gligor in an interrogation room. What followed was a tense battle of wills recorded on body cam and interrogation video. Initially, Gligor was defiant. When Detective Tara Augustin informed him, "Well, honey, your DNA was in the crime scene," Gligor's confident demeanor faltered.
Honey, your DNA was in the crime scene. That's why, there's a reason.
There's due process, right?
Sure,
Due process.
sure.
So you're saying I'm guilty before I've even been put into a court of... In your eyes, it's guilty until proven innocent. I get it.
He struggled to collect himself, realizing science had finally caught up with him. Still, he did not immediately confess. Instead, Gligor fumed, calling the situation insane and invoking his rights. "Innocent until proven guilty, right?" he snapped. He even asked for a lawyer, and the interrogation ended with no direct confession at that moment. But the writing was on the wall. Prosecutors had DNA, motive, and now a visibly rattled suspect caught on camera, reacting to the evidence. Gligor's attorneys tried to fight the DNA's admissibility, arguing the police trick at the airport was unconstitutional. Facing the likelihood that the evidence would hold and a conviction was inevitable, Eugene Gligor folded. In May 2025, he stood in court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in Leslie Preer's death. In a sense, his courtroom plea was his confession, delivered not to detectives in a small room, but to a judge in a public hearing. Observers noted Gligor spoke in a low voice, finally admitting what he'd denied since 2001. The family of the victim wept as he acknowledged his guilt after so many years. Detective Augustin later revealed some details of the interrogation that preceded the plea.
This is all very bewildering, very strange. I don't want to incriminate myself with questions. You guys are professional.
She said once Gligor knew about the DNA, he struggled to collect himself. What came next wasn't a confession, at least not right away. But that moment of confrontation was crucial. The body cam and audio captured the exact point when Gligor realized the game was over, and his bluster gave way to fear. Gone is the confident man who had lived half his life with a deadly secret. Science spoke louder than Gligor's lies. Ultimately, he chose to confess in court rather than on camera, likely hoping for a lighter sentence. He received 30 years. The Eugene Gligor case highlights how modern forensic tactics can force a confession without the suspect ever directly saying, "I did it," to detectives. The moment the DNA evidence was revealed was effectively the moment of truth. Gligor's face, captured on video, said it all, even as his words denied it. Confronted with undeniable evidence of his guilt, this cold case killer had nowhere left to run. Within months, he acknowledged his crime in open court, ensuring that DNA got the confession that detectives couldn't.